Today's sewing tutorial will be on the large face mask with filter pocket. Now you will be able to find the pattern to both the large size and the regular size in the description box below. And you will also find a pattern to make this awesome filter for that mask. Now what I'm doing here is demonstrating the OLEFIN filter, which is just a very thin, lightweight piece of spun material, fabric, or what have you. And I'm just demonstrating how when you pour water into it, it actually repels the water and keeps moisture and anything that's wet away from you. Now, the World Health Organization did come out and say that they recommend a polyester, which is a polypropylene filter such as OLEFIN, in between the two fabric mask pieces. So I went ahead and purchased some OLEFIN and did the testing and tried it out, and boy does it work. Click the link above to catch that video where I tested it fully with the mask. Hi friends, Tracy here from the Sewing Channel. All the links to purchase all of the supplies are in the description box. Don't know how to find the description box on YouTube? Click this link right here. It will show you how to do that. Now let's get busy making this mask. After you have printed out your pattern and you've cut it out, go ahead and put the outer fabric right side together on the fold there, and we are going to first, you see that little notch there, and you see me folding that back. You are going to do the same thing with the notch on your pattern, and then you are going to lay it on the fold as you see me do, and then we're going to cut around that entire piece. I want you to take note that that pointy piece right there at the top, that is the nose piece. You should end up with a piece that looks just like mine. Now this piece probably looks really odd to you, but it won't be. You'll understand it here soon enough. Take your inner fabric, the part that will be touching your face, go ahead and fold that right sides together, and then we're going to lift that notch back up. Remember, we folded it for the outer fabric, but for the inner one we want it up. And then you see that dotted line right there. I want you to turn it over just like you see me do, and I need you to fold that right on the dotted line. Once you've folded it on the dotted line, go ahead and turn it over and then place that on the folded fabric, just like that. Then I want you to cut around that pattern piece, including that notch right there. We want that notch on the inner fabric. After cut, it should look just like this. Once you cut your OLEFIN filter, set it aside, and then everything should look just like this, all cut and ready. First, let's make our nose piece. Take your 5-inch long 1/4 inch foam and lay it on half of your fabric, your scrap fabric, and then you're going to take your 4 inches of rust-free wire and lay that down, and then approximately 5 inches of the heat bond lay on top of the wire. Then you're going to fold over the scrap fabric just like you see me do, and then we're going to take a hot steam iron to that and connect that together. This is so it doesn't shift when it's in our mask and while we're sewing it and all that. You can see here that mine is very much connected. Now what I need you to do is sew around that entire piece of wire. Give yourself a little bit of room at the end of each wire though. You don't want it in there so snugly that it wants to poke through at any of the ends. Take your outer fabric. We are going to make this fold toward the wrong side of the fabric, and we're going to do a 1/2 inch. Now you see me pointing to that pointy notch there. That is what's going to help us have perfect folds, perfect 1/2 inch folds. So you're going to fold that twice over, and you see there how that 1/2 inch goes so nicely, just like that, and give it a good press. And then we're going to switch to the other side and do the same exact thing. And remember, you're folding toward the wrong side of your fabric. Paying attention to that notch again, we're going to go ahead and do a 1/2 inch fold, and we should match up right there at that pointy part. If we're not matching up, then we did it wrong. Be sure to press a nice crease in those 1/2 inch folds. Now we're going to take our inner fabric, the fabric that's close to our face, and we are going to again fold toward the wrong side of the fabric in the same manner that we did the outer fabric, paying attention to those pointy notches right there on the edge of the fabric. And those are going to give us perfect folds every time at a 1/2 inch. Now we're going to tack that entire hemmed area on all 4 sides down with just a simple stitch down all 4 sides, right along the good side, the right side of the fabric. Here I'm just showing you the wrong side, how we folded it, and I'm folding it back over and then showing you again where you're going to stitch at. This is what it should look like after you have stitched down both the inner and outer fabric, all 4 sides or wings. All of the hem areas are nice and sewn down with a top stitching. Now I want you to fold over with right sides together, and I want you to make sure that everything is matched up perfectly. If it's not matched up perfectly, you need to go back and redo this. So with right sides together from chin to nose, I want you to sew a 1/4 inch seam allowance around that entire curved area. Now it should look like this when you're done. Take the outer piece and then you're going to iron that seam allowance to one side on the inside of that outer piece of fabric. It doesn't matter really which side you first push that seam allowance to, but it will matter here in a minute, and I'll show you why here soon. First though, we are going to put a nice top stitch right down the center of this mask, being sure to catch the seam allowance within our stitch. If you want to skip that step, go ahead. It is not really needed. I only do it so that my seam lays nice and flat, but if you want to skip it, go ahead. Here I'm going to check and see with my front and back piece together how it would be in the end when the mask is finished. I'm checking to see the seam allowances. I want them to go in opposite directions. Just like you see there how I have it nestled, that's how it's going to end up in the end, and that's good. That's what we want. See, you don't want a lot of bulk in that area, so we're trying to prevent that by being proactive with ironing the seam allowances in the way that they should go. We are not going to top stitch on the inner fabric of the mask, but you could if you wanted to. Everything is lining up just as we need it to. Now on to the nose piece. Here I have a little bit more excess fabric than what I wanted. I only want about a 1/4 inch up from that initial seam that we made around the rust-free wire. So I'm just trimming that up to about a 1/4 inch from that seam. Once we sew it in, we will also trim a little bit more. The less bulk, the better. Now turn your seam allowance straight up. It should be on the top, and then you're going to put a bend right in the middle of that wire, and we're going to snip some of the tension out of that seam allowance, just as you see me do here, right in the middle, and then I go off into the sides. Be sure though not to clip the thread that you had sewed there. You should have something that looks like this. Pay special close attention to which way the foam goes into your mask. I mess this part up sometimes and end up with a project that is no good because no one wants to have wire sitting against the bone of their nose. So what I'm doing is I'm putting the inner part of the mask upward like you see me do there. That part is going to go on my face, okay? And then I'm going to take the squishy side of the foam, not the wire side. I'm going to feel which side it's on. You'll be able to tell. That portion of the foam, that side of the foamy squishy part, that is going to go on the wrong side of that fabric, just like you see me putting it there, right up against there. Sometimes I mix that up. I don't know why, but I do. And pin that to, or not pin, but clip that together, and then you're going to take that to the sewing machine, and we're going to just sew a straight stitch right across the top, just tacking that down. Now I am going to sew along the sides here, right along the sides of the foam. That will help tack down that foam to the inner lining of the face mask, and that way with washings and such it won't get twisted around in there. Now you see I've pointed to the sides right there, and that's where you're going to want to sew. It should look something like this. And you see the other side there, you can see those two side stitches where I went alongside of the foam. Now take right sides together, being sure to match up the middle seam area. Here you're going to just clip the top portion of the two layers together. Once the top is clipped, you're just going to do one straight seam right above the top where the foam is. Do not go alongside of the foam like we did when we first sewed it on. And it should look something like this. It should be like a hinge almost. And you see here that both my seams match up perfectly, and I'm feeling there to make sure that the foam is on the side that it should be closest to my face, because like I said, I've messed that one up. Take the time and clip off any excess bulk just at that top portion where you've sewn already. It should look like this when you're at this point. With right sides together still, I'm just finger pressing everything nicely, making sure that everything's laying straight and flat. And now we are going to tend to that outer wing area. And what I'm going to do is just lift that toward that inside portion of the mask. I'm only going to cover half of the hem, half of that half-inch hem that we initially made, and it's going to be it's going to lay on top of, you see there, I'm laying that darker blue on top of the lighter blue. Everything is still inside out though, and that's the way we want it, because we're going to turn it right side out through that pocket, and it's going to work out perfectly. After you get that laying on that other hem, so it's hem laying on top of hem, we are going to put a clip on all four sides to hold that in place until we can get it over to our sewing machine and sew that down. So again, we're just laying inside out still. We're just lifting that darker blue wing up to the lighter blue wing and laying it on top of half of that hem, which would be a 1/4 inch of that hem. And I'm going to just clip it, but it needs to overlap. After the clips are in and everything is straight, I want you to try and fold that. You're going to have to bend the wire forcefully in order to get that closed enough, because we want to be able to see that everything is symmetrical. Everything's the same on both sides, because we don't want one wing longer than the other and then everything's going to be off. So we need to make sure that that is precisely the same. This one looks pretty good. But if yours is not perfectly the same, then you need to go back and redo something, reclip it. And believe me, this extra effort will ensure that you don't have one ear strap longer on one end than the other. Align your seams at the bottom chin area and place a clip in there. And then we are going to take our mask to our sewing machine, and we are not going to sew down the sides at all. Do not sew down the sides. No, no. We are going to sew across the top a 1/4 inch from one end all the way to the other end. And then we are going to go to the bottom of the mask and from one end of the mask all the way to the other end. Once you have sewn both the top and the bottom, go ahead and turn it right side out through one of the pocket areas. Be sure to poke out all of the corners. At this point, finger press everything down nice, and then you're going to give it a good hot press with the iron. With your fingers, you're just going to push everything straight and just iron it until you're pleased with it. Iron the inside and the outside. Make sure that where your seams meet up on the top and the bottom, you see there, mine wasn't as straight as I wanted it, so I'm going to finger shift it to where I want it and then give it a good press. Now you're going to fold it in half again and just make sure everything is symmetrical. I do this several times throughout this project because there's nothing worse than a mask that isn't straight. Looking at the inside of the mask, you're going to lift that dark blue piece wing area, lift that up about a half an inch and give that a good press so that there is a really nice crisp crease right there. On both sides of the wings, you are going to make a straight stitch, but stay as far away from the crease as you can. We're essentially making a tube to put the elastic in at this point. You are going to weave your elastic right into that tube, just as you see me do there. And we are going to tie a knot in it, and we are going to hide that knot within the tubing. Now here I am using comfort elastic. It is super soft and super comfortable. They actually use the comfort elastic in the hospital masks in the hospitals, and it has proven to be the most comfortable. And if you need any of that, that is in my eBay store. If you haven't done so already, go ahead and cut out your olefin filter and get that ready. And remember, you just cut on the fold. There it is there, and we are going to just slide it in, just as you see me do. And I usually stick my hand in the other side to catch it and finger press it out. Until next time on the Sewing Channel, take care.